Mark 5, verses 1 through 20. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him any more, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there was on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. And then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had had the legion. And they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. And then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. Demons wreaked all kinds of havoc in the first century when Jesus walked on this earth. In the words of my seminary president, Dr. Brian Blunt, a scholar on Mark's gospel, he explains it like this: demons broke through mental and physical defenses. Like thieves in the night, they stole in and inhabited the human psyche and drained people of all their strength and personality. Demons were hostile, malignant, spiritual parasites, as Dr. Blunt describes it. They robbed people of the most precious possession that we have, our very selves. What the demons left in its place was a twisted, mean-spirited, warped, and tangled up ball of psychological fury and chaos. Some demon-possessed went crazy. Others died. Here, in the 5th chapter of Mark's Gospel, Jesus has arrived on the opposite shore from where he was coming, and we meet one such demon-possessed man. He lives among the tombs, tormented and violent, inflicting harm on himself, unable to be restrained even with shackles and chains. No human has the strength to subdue him. Night and day, he dwells in the mountains, among the tombs, literally keeping company only with the dead, howling like a wild man, bruising himself with stones. Just like in Jesus' first miracle in Mark, the demons recognize Jesus immediately. Their name is Legion, for they are many. When they realize that they are about to be expelled by this Jesus, they strike a deal. Don't send us out of the country, they beg. Send us into the swine nearby. Jesus gives them permission. The unclean spirits flee from the man, go straight into the herd of pigs, who immediately run off a cliff and drown in the sea. The swineherds, those who were tending the pigs, witness this event, this exorcism, and they flee to the city and to the surrounding country, and they tell what they saw. People come from all over wanting to know what had happened for themselves, and they find this man, the one that they knew as a madman, no doubt, the demoniac, the tomb dweller, the howler. And what did they find? He is clothed and in his right mind. It's a miracle. I had fully intended not to preach on an exorcism today. I had fully intended to preach on the healing that happens in the second part of this 5th chapter of Mark. It's the one that the lectionary actually calls for today. That's the sort of the 3-year cycle of scriptures that helps us work our way through the Bible every Sunday. And at this point in time, the lectionary skips this one. So I was going about my week, doing my thing, passing right on over it, until one morning, it was Wednesday, the Spirit woke me up. And it was as if it was whispering to me, saying, "Go back. Don't skip the exorcism. Not this time." And while I was out walking later that day, it hit me as to why. Y'all, before healing can happen, demons need to be driven out. Before new life can take root, unclean spirits have to be cast out. Before new mission is engaged, before new evangelists are commissioned, death-dealing, life-draining, malignant and malforming, personality-plundering, spiritual parasites must be purged. So today, we do not skip over the exorcism. And who isn't squirming at the mention of exorcisms? I mean, we are 21st century post-Enlightenment, rational, logical, mystery debunking, mainline people. I was speaking to Methodists this morning, but if you're watching this video, you might be of whatever persuasion. At any rate, we are children of the Enlightenment. We can explain this. We can decode this. These ancients, I mean, they didn't really have any better way of explaining things, so surely it wasn't an actual demon or unclean spirit. I mean, there was more to it than this exorcism than it appears. Unless maybe that's exactly what happened. The more I thought about it, the more I reflected, the more I prayed over it this week, the more I thought about how we can't skip over the exorcisms. They were foundational to Jesus' ministry. In fact, it was one of the reasons that he became so popular, so famous in the area. People had heard what he is able to do. People had heard of the power Jesus had to cast out demons. It's one of the main reasons that people flocked to see him, to be healed by him. And then it also made me think about how exorcisms actually come in all shapes and sizes. I found myself at an interesting table this week. I found myself sharing a meal with a person I once considered an enemy of sorts. You don't need to know all the details in order to understand the story that I'm telling. Sitting with this person, though, eating together, talking and laughing, the way that friends do. Despite the past that we have, despite the pain that had been caused in our history, I could not help but marvel at the power of God to cast out death-dealing forces, demons. Oh, it took years. It took years for those unclean spirits to be cast out of me. It took work, intentionality. It took discipline. It took struggle. It took prayer in ways that I had never prayed before. It took staying open, being vulnerable, even when everything in my entire being told me to shut down and self-protect. It took me being broken enough to really, truly trust in the power of God. To redeem, to recreate, to resurrect. And yeah, it took therapy and coaching, and it took a community of support, friends who stayed rooted in the faith, in the connection, in the community that I know to be true. But guess what? Exorcisms can take all shapes and sizes. And I'm telling you this story not to boast about what I have done in my own life and faith. I'm telling you my story in order to witness to the power of God in Jesus. Jesus is Lord over our pain, Lord over our past, Lord over our history, Lord over our brokenness. Jesus is Lord over our anger, bitterness, resentment, and even our lust for revenge. All of those unclean spirits were cast out of me, and there I sat on Monday, clothed and in my right mind, restored in a relationship that I wondered would be broken forever. And there was bread, and there was wine, and there was abundance, and there was joy. And there was a future that I had not imagined nor been capable of getting to on my own. No, past hurt was not erased, old harms were not undone, but by the grace of God, by the power of Jesus working in us, a brand new path forward is being carved out right before our eyes. Resurrection is real. New life is possible. Exorcisms come in all shapes and sizes. The way that the story continues in Mark is that when the people from the city and the country arrive and see this person delivered from his torment, restored to new life, free of his demons, whole and well, they're overjoyed with excitement, and they begin to plan the party, right? No, that's not what they do. Seeing the demoniac, clothed and in his right mind, they were afraid. And they began to beg Jesus to leave the neighborhood. A man was delivered from the demons that possessed him, and seeing him whole did not inspire the people to celebrate. They were afraid. A man was free, and they were afraid. And the great irony is, a man they had tried to shackle and subdue was brought back to life, and in their fear, they were blind to their own chains. Just as Jesus gives those demons permission to go into the pigs, Jesus does not stay where he is not wanted. He gets into the boat to leave, and the man falls down. The man who had been healed, and he begs to go with Jesus. And y'all, right here, this is discipleship language. The man wants to follow. The man wants to live and learn this life with Jesus, but Jesus refuses him. And he says, no. Your job right now is to go home. And Jesus says, go and tell your friends of what the Lord has done for you. Go tell of the mercy God has shown you. In this moment, Jesus commissions a new evangelist. He has made this man a preacher, and he has given him a new mission. The man does what he's told. He goes out and proclaims to the 10 cities of the area what Jesus has done for him, and Mark tells us that everyone was amazed. In fact, what's going to happen is that Jesus is actually going to return to the area just a few chapters ahead. And when he does, Mark tells us that the people had heard of him. This man, formerly cast out of his community, formerly demon-possessed, formerly written off by everyone, is now the evangelist who is going to lay the groundwork, plant the seeds for people in a whole new area to know Jesus and join the faith. Healing comes with a mission. The demons are not cast out. The exorcism is not performed. The healing does not occur so that the man can return home and take up life as he knew it. The exorcism healing is intended to be transformational. Nothing can ever be the same again. Jesus does not bring him back in order to restore the status quo. There was a time a few years ago when I could not imagine myself sitting at a table with the person I sat with this week. Bitterness and resentment was strong, and it could not be subdued within me. I was the one living among the tombs. And then Jesus does what he does. He got a hold of me. He got a hold of all of that was unclean within me. And he cast it out. He cast out the death dealing and the demonic. He cast out the parasitic powers that were leeching life. And indeed, those powers were no match for his own. Just like always, when the time came and when the time was right, there was bread and there was wine, and there was a place set for me, and there was a place set for them and for others, a place set for all those, especially those whom we never would have even thought to invite. Today was not the day to skip the exorcism. Because when the demons are driven out, healing can happen. When malignant and malforming, personality plundering, spiritual parasites are purged, that is when new mission can be engaged. and new evangelists commissioned. Ultimately, y'all, I don't think the question is whether we believe this is true or not. I think the real thing is whether or not we're living like it's true or not. Amen. And may it be so.